One time.
What's up guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're playing some 1-3 6-handed. We get into quite a few interesting spots. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe, and remember to turn on the notification bell if you want to be notified for future videos. Let's get into it. Welcome back to another video guys. Today we start off with a stack of 300 in this 1-3 game and pick up pocket 10s in the small blind. We get into some interesting pre-flop action here. The cutoff opens to 15, the button makes the call and the action's on to me. I definitely need a 3-bet here, the question is what size. I end up going quite small to $60 only, because with all our stack sizes being 300 effective, there's very little playability post-flop, as the SPR will decrease to an unplayable level. We get punished for our small raise size however. The big blind snap calls us, causing the cutoff and button to make the call too. The flop comes King Deuce 3 monotone all clubs. This pot is ballooned up massively and there's just no way we can be good here, right? Out of position, I'm kind of handcuffed with this flop. We're 4 ways, someone is bound to have a king. Leading out here probably won't achieve anything, as any high clubs or a king will certainly call, so I check. It checks around to the button, who makes a tiny bet of $30. With such a small bet sizing, I just make the call, although I'm not happy about it as there are 2 players behind me who could easily raise it up. Fortunately, the big blind calls and the cutoff folds, meaning we get to see a turn for cheap. The turn comes the 4 of hearts. It doesn't change much unless someone has a hand like ace 5 suited perhaps. Once again, there's nothing else for me to do but check, and this time it checks around. The river comes the 4 of clubs. Well, now we might as well open fold because it's more likely that someone has 5 of a kind here than us winning this pot. We check, and the big blind bets a tiny 40 into this pot of 330. Surprisingly, the button folds, and this bet is just so tiny, can we really call this off? We're getting about 9-1 odds, meaning we need to win this pot around 10% to be profitable in this scenario. To be honest, we're not even getting good enough odds to call, but I throw in some calling chips, the price is just too good, and the big blind flips over a king, so he gets the thinnest of value from me on the river, and we lose the first pot of the day. In this next hand, we pick up ace queen offsuit on the button. Under the gun opens it up to 15, the cutoff makes the call, and having learned from my mistake in the previous hand, I 3-bet to 70 this time. Luckily it works, only under the gun makes the call, and we're going to a flop with the under the gun player only having around 91 left in their stack, as do we actually have the same amount left in our stacks. A big problem of our game has been the raises being too large pre-flop, meaning the stack to pot ratio becomes too small in any 3-bet pot, or even some regular pots. But don't worry, we fixed this for future episodes, altering stack sizes to make it more like a standard game of poker. The flop comes 9 queen 3 2 diamonds. Well, there's just no way we're folding here with the stack sizes. Our opponent checks to us, and there's nothing left to do than snap shove for $91 effective.
Check, all in.
We know we'll get called by pretty much anything unless he calls our 3-bet with suited connectors such as 5-6 suited, etc. We're pretty much not beat by anything, unless he has a set here, as aces and kings would shove pre-flop with another player behind. We chop with ace queen, and we're ahead of any draw. After deliberating for a while, he does make the call, and we're off to a run out. The turn comes the 3 of hearts, the river comes, the queen of diamonds. Well, we pretty much have the nuts. If he has pocket 3s, it's time to quit poker. We flip over our hand and our opponent mucks in disgust. We take this one down. On to the next one, we pick up queen 9 offsuit in the cutoff, and we actually just play a family pot in this one. All 6 players limp, and we're off to a flop. This was unplanned, it's just the way it went. The flop comes queen 9 8 2 spades. Well, we can't exactly argue with this one. I don't think it's possible for us to be beat here. All queens, 9s and 8s would be raising pre-flop, as well as the fact that we block both queens and 9s. Jack 10 would almost always be raising pre-flop, so we should be good here. Action begins by the small blind almost potting it, betting $15. It falls around to me, and with many draws out there, many things we can get value from, we need to get as many chips in the pot as possible. We raise to 45. The button folds, and as expected, the small blind calls. Heads up to a turn, which comes the deuce of clubs. Changes absolutely nothing except maybe giving our opponent a backdoor flush draw. The small blind now donk bets into us for $80. We have around 880 left in our stack. This bet's really weird from him in my opinion. I consider flat calling here to let him blast away at the river, but having the board so locked up, there's a good chance he's drawing, and we'll either be letting him see a card in which either he bets and has us beat, or he folds to our bet if he doesn't hit, which would just be a terrible situation, so there's no need for us to let him have that. So we just jam it in, meaning our opponent has to put $102 extra as he has us covered. Unfortunately, he quickly folds, so he was probably bluffing or maybe had a weak draw of some sorts. We scoop the pot. Hand number 4, we pick up a pretty one, 7-8 of diamonds on the button, it folds around to me, I open up the action to $12 and get immediately snapped 3-bet by the small blind to 24 who's directly on my left. This is extremely weird action, the small blind hasn't played as much on our table, so I don't really know how he plays all too well, I just make the call. The flop comes monotone once again, 6 ace 9 all clubs, once again. Typically this board texture favors the 3-better in this scenario as it is an ace high board, but as I said, I don't really know what my opponent does that well, so I'm not too sure what his pre-flop ranges are like. For my actual hand, it's a pretty good flop, giving us an open ender, so when our opponent checks to us, we make a bet of $20. I could have sized down even more in this flop. Usually on monotone boards you could size down a lot to something like 1/5 pot. The reasons for this are there's a clear distinction between the hands an opponent is going to call and fold. There's no real hands on the line of it being close. For example, this means usually if an opponent is going to call, they're going to call either a really big bet or a small bet because that's what their hand would do. So there's no real merit in sizing up, especially when we have 8 high. Our opponent does make a call and we're off to a turn. The turn comes the 5 of spades, we drill our straight, nice. When the small blind checks once again, I decide to bet $45. Looking back, I can probably go a bit larger, as from what I've gathered from this player, he's probably not folding if he has a strong club, even if I bet really high and not giving him the right odds. Saying that, however, he now min raises it up to 90, something that, to be honest, looks pretty strong and could represent a flush. It also could represent a drawing club. My hand is just way too strong to flat. It also needs some protection against a club if he does have that holding, so I min raise it up again to 180. I'm targeting a club here, to be honest. This bet leaves me with around 160 behind. If I was bluffing, I'd probably want to shove my whole stack in, but I'm not too sure my opponent is thinking on the level of how I'm balancing my bluffing and value frequencies in this spot, so for that reason I think 180 is a good size to make him call. He does make the call, making me really think he has a club, and we're off to a river. The river comes the dreaded 4th club, the queen of clubs. Having 160 behind and our opponent covering us, I really just hope he doesn't jam it in here, because we'd be getting fantastic odds and it would just put us in a really tough spot, because what he's representing he should just have us beat and we'd be bluff catching. Although I'd probably be leaning towards a fold in this spot. With some miracle, he checks, we can't check back quickly enough and somehow we're good. Our opponent just has an ace, so we take this one down. On to the final hand of the night, we pick up a premium ace-king offsuit under the gun. We open up the action to 20, sizing up as we don't want to be going to the flop with too many opponents, which is a common occurrence at this table. Our plan works as only the button makes the call. The flop comes deuce 6 jack 2 spades, pretty dry and definitely one that we can be c-betting for value. For the same reasons as monotone boards, we want to be sizing down on these dry flops. We lead out for $14. Our opponent is the one and only Mr. Min Raise. He whips out his special and makes it 28. The price is good, no need to be worried yet, we could very well have the best hand. We make the call. The turn comes the 8 of clubs, bringing in the backdoor flush draw. It definitely suits the button's range in this scenario. I check and the button bets 40. This is the turning point in the hand because it's basically whether I believe him or whether I don't. I do end up making the call because there's 2 flush draws on the board. We unblock spades. It's unfortunate that we have the king of clubs as we block some combos of flush draws, but all in all I still think we may have the best hand here, as well as the fact that this player is extremely aggressive and can be bluffing a lot of the time. The river comes the 7 of hearts, pretty much a brick unless he had a straight draw which now made a pair. We check once again and now the button bets $30. Really weird sizing, it's pretty tiny and we're getting 7-1 odds. We just need to win the pot 12.5% of the time. A 7 pair would almost definitely check back here, so I can eliminate that. I don't know what card would really bet this size for value, maybe a deuce or a 6, but even that would probably check back river here. Unless he's read me absolutely perfectly in that I have nothing, or maybe that I had a draw. That's the only way this bet makes sense to me if it was for value. Either way, I have to call. Our opponent says he has king high with spades and we take down the last pot of the night. Thanks for watching guys, hope you enjoyed the session. It was quite an interesting one. After that last pot you watched, we actually bled a lot. We were at a stack of around 700. We bled to 300, which is around starting stack. So in total we were in for $300, out for 333, meaning there was a net positive of $33 in this session. Not the most swingy one, but still had a few interesting spots. I enjoyed myself. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe, turn on that notification bell, and yeah, peace.